Welcome, everyone, to this May 16th Ways and Means meeting. Let's rise and recite the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda this morning?
We do. We have one addition. We're going to be adding under the Human Resources Director update an item D, which is state grant, additional support for prosecutor's office review of use and framework of funding.
Okay.
Move the amended agenda.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, agenda's moved and passed. Approval of the minutes for April 11th and April 25th.
Move them.
Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, we are into item number 5, our first limited public comment. If you'd like to speak, step up to the podium, state your name, and you've got about 3 minutes. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6. Public Works and Human Resources Department restructure review. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. How are you guys?
So far, so good. What are you going to tell us?
Well, I don't think it's bad. Right now, I've been working with the controller's office on the planning and zoning budget. With all the numbers that we've ran so far, if we do where the townships pay, the 11 townships that we service for planning and zoning, the maximum amount they would have to pay would be $15,000. Connie's office is still working on the definite number, but we do know that it won't be any more than that. The other thing we have put together, that Brandy and I put together, is a new fee schedule for planning and zoning. And when we sat down and looked at it, I know it seems like it is quite a jump, but right now, like for a conditional use permit, it's costing us money by the time we do all the mailings and we pay the planning commission and do all the fill out all the forms and everything. It's costing the department money. And by adding, raising their fees, it will pay for itself that way. So I'm asking for you guys to approve the new fee schedule and allow us to move forward with the townships and working with them, so that they pay whatever final dollar amount we come up with, no more than $15,000 for the future of planning and zoning.
Any questions for Chris?
You did have a motion, Mr.
We-
Chair.
We had a motion?
Yeah, from
Okay.
Mr.
Do we have support?
I'll support.
Okay, now, discussion. Okay, Commissioner Haskell.
How do these fees, the new fees, compare to other zoning boards around in the region?
They're in line.
Okay.
You know, it varies throughout the counties. Some are more, some are where we're at today. Brandy and I just went through it and tried to make it so that we weren't losing money and costing the department money when people apply for an application.
Okay, and then I just had one question from my own ignorance here. Conditional use permit, change of conditions. What is a change of conditions permit?
That's if you want to change something on your conditional use permit.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Any other questions, comments? For instance, Commissioner Haskell, at Crandall Park, there was a change of the proposed driveway entry into the park. Wasn't on the original plan. So we had to bring that back to get approval for that, and that's still in the process, correct, Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll go in front of the planning commission in June.
All right. Well, any other questions or comments? I like what you've got here. I know there's a lot more we've got to take a look at. What was your implementation date on this
For the fee schedule,
for whatever you've got in front of us?
so for the fee schedule, I'd like to make that June 1st of this year. July 1st at the latest, because the sooner we can implement this, the better off we're gonna be. My assumption is, in talking with Connie, is that charging the townships, that'll all start October 1st. So once we have the budget together and the numbers together for that, October 1, the townships we'd get contracts drawn up with them, and they would have to start paying for 25, 26 budget.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Barber?
Yes, I think Brandy stated during the Public Works meeting that several of these, like the conditional use permit and the Board of Appeals, currently, right now, it costs you $450 to hold that board, is that correct?
Correct, just to pay the board members, yeah.
So if you look back at the past fees for those, we were losing money, not just a couple dollars, we were, a couple $100 we were losing
Yep.
on just holding the board, so.
And just for an instance, the conditional use permit for the park, I think we just mailed out 82 mailings for the surrounding area to notify them of the proposed changes. And we all know that postage is not getting cheaper.
Any other question?
Just for clarity's sake, do we want to add to the motion a actual start date to this, or what, are we able to just let them determine that?
For the fee schedule, you should do June 1st.
June
You can
1st?
amend it for June 1st.
Okay.
For the townships, making the payments October 1st, but that would have to go through the budget process as well.
Okay. Commissioner Barber, would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Yes, I'll amend my motion to establish that date.
Any other questions or comments? Well, we should put this to a vote. I am a little concerned with the amount of some of the increases. And I understand, we're trying to make sure that you're a self-supporting department, I get that. I'm looking at district change amendment, rezoning application. What does that entail? You want to go $1,100 up on that one.
I'll have Brandy come up and speak about that, because she can probably speak about it in greater detail than I can.
Okay, all right.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brandy.
A district change amendment is an amendment either to the zoning ordinance or to the actual zoning of a property. That application is required to go in front of the Planning Commission, Public Works and Human Services, and the Board of Commissioners. We're required to do 2 different public notices on that application alone. So it's a very significant application and a more intense process than just our conditional use permit process.
All right, thank you. And then I'm looking at private road application. And I understand that, because we've got a few in my district, but that is a substantial increase on that. What does that entail?
A private road application actually requires me to look at the engineering of the road to ensure that it meets the requirements of our zoning ordinance, which are literally 2 steps down from actually building a county road. Also, the notifications to the other agencies and working with other agencies like the fire department, the sheriff's office, central dispatch, any other local authorities that may have a concern or need to know basis about a road. And the inspection of the road, not only at the beginning of construction, but through construction and at the end of construction. The reason the $3,000 is in place is that would cover the cost of the work done by staff for all of those reviews. And typically, when a private road is established, it's done by a developer. They're looking to establish the private road so they can divide the property further than PA 28 of 1967, which the Land Division Act allows for. When a private road is put in, you're given extra splits than an assessor normally would assign. The private road fee for a legal non-conforming private road is only $1,000. The engineering is not as robust, and that is typically for a private road or a private driveway that has existed prior to 1991. Our private road ordinance went into effect in 1992. So if somebody currently has a shared driveway, which is considered a legal nonconformity, let's say it was a group of families that shared this driveway and they all wanted to sell their property but wanted to make sure that that was protected and there was a maintenance agreement in place. That's when the legal nonconforming private road application would come into play.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to look in your crystal ball before we vote on this. How long do you think these fee increases would be sustainable? I mean, are we looking 10 years, 20 years, 5 years? For your
I would be
department.
confident in saying minimum 10 years.
Minimum 10 years.
Our fee schedule has not increased substantially since 1999. Our last increase was in 2004 when we added the change of conditions application on there, which is $200.
All right. Okay, thank you, Randy. Any questions for Brandy? All righty, we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Or,
Commissioner Barber's.
Commissioner Barber, what you were saying? Yes, we do. Yeah, and we've just ended discussion. So, what's our pleasure? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, you've got your fee schedule, Chris.
Thank you. Have a good day, you guys.
That will go to the board
Yes.
as well.
All righty. Item number 7, Equalization and Property Description Director. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. Got quite a few reports this morning, that time of year. Taxable value, or I'm sorry, the PA 116 was the first one. We had 3 parcels going in the PA 116 program in Calamo Township, total of 269 acres, and they're doing a 20-year agreement.
All right. I see on here, it says plus or minus. We're kind of guessing, are we pretty certain?
No, we're pretty certain based on the maps, that's the correct acreage.
All right, okay. Do we have a motion to accept this? Okay, moved. Support? Okay, moved and supported. Now discussion. Any questions or comments for Tim on this? All right, seeing none, this is pretty standard practice. I know my family's been through this. So, all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? All right, moved and passed. What's up next, Tim?
4046, the taxable value report. The taxable values went up 4.47% overall this year, which was pretty similar to what we expected. We did have, it was kind of disappointing, the city of Lansing's taxable value went down because they had some exemptions in the personal property. But overall, it was pretty solid. The inflation went down this year, so that made the increase less than it was last year. But we have been moving up pretty good. That's still well above the average that we've been running. So that was good news, obviously. And then I broke it down if anybody wanted to see the detail per unit. Some of the bigger ones we had were City of Olivet was up 10.9%. Potterville City was up 6.91%. Eaton Rapids City was up 6.58. So we did have some pretty solid increases this year. And that needs to be approved to the full board.
Were there any surprises in this, Tim?
No, that's pretty much what we're expected. There, just to mention, Delta Township did have some delays in some of the commercial development, but that's taking place now, so it looks like we're gonna see some increases in the shopping center up there. They're starting to move on some of the commercial development that was being delayed temporarily.
Commissioner Moudry?
Tim, I got a couple questions here. We've had this discussion before. Are we getting many challenges through the tax tribunal from commercial operations?
We're getting a few, not too bad so far. The Walmart, as my understanding, has been under appeal for quite a long time in Delta Township. They're still waiting for that to go to court. They don't want to settle that, but it's a small difference on that particular case. Auto Owners is appealing now, is our understanding, at their new development there off 496. So that's a decent sized appeal. But just those two is the only two that I'm aware of as far as big ones.
I know a number of years ago, there was a lot of them down the Saginaw corridor in Delta Township. It seems like there were dozens of them.
Yeah.
And what about the disabled veterans? How many of those do we have in our county?
I'm not sure about the count, but we're up to taxable value now is 37,800,000 that we're losing tax revenue on as far as, and that's broken out in my report as far as what that difference is. Because that is included in the 4046, but we have to subtract it when we're doing the Headley rollback calculations. I guess part of the reason our understanding is why they're including that is they want those higher numbers for revenue sharing. So Department of Treasury still wants to include those values.
We always like a little revenue sharing, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Yep.
All right, any other questions, comments for Tim on this report? All right, we don't have to take any action on that except to say thank you.
Okay.
And you'll come back and tell us about it at the commissioners' meeting, correct?
Yep.
All right. Item C there, Tim, what do you have for us?
We had the 4028, which is the Headley rollback report, which has a direct impact on the county tax rates and the tax rates throughout the entire county. We did have to recalculate this a few times. The software vendor was having some issues getting it correct. It is quite complicated with subtracting out the Renaissance zones and subtracting out the disabled veterans now. And the problem with the disabled veterans is they, like I've told you guys previously, they continue to make changes throughout the year. So those are being changed on a daily basis, which does make it quite difficult. We came out to a Headley rollback of 0.9986 for the county. You count the line that has the minus the Renaissance zone. So pretty much all the jurisdictions had Headley rollbacks this year. Some of them were quite large. I mentioned City of Olivet just now. They had a pretty large rollback, 0.9748, because of their large increase in taxable values. The only ones that did not have rollbacks this year were Delta Township, Oneida Township, and Roxanne Township. And we calculate this for all the townships, cities, and villages, all the district libraries and taxing authorities, as well as the school districts, both non-homestead and all properties. And that information has to go out pretty soon because of the summer tax bills going out in the near future. And that brings on the 4029, it brings the county tax rate down to 5.2023 now. But the good news is the Headley rollback was less than we originally projected, so the tax rate was a little bit higher than we originally projected, so that was good.
Any questions, Commissioner Haskell?
That 5.2023, that's down from 5.5 initially, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we know roughly for just this year's Headley rollbacks what the physical number is for revenue loss?
I'm not sure, but overall, it's been running a little over $1 million roughly in tax revenue that we're losing every year, and that obviously goes up as that number goes down over time.
So just kind of like snowballs and compounds.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments for Tim?
Yeah, I think you have that figure, but the loss due to Headley going all the way back to 1994, was it around 27 million is what you estimate we've lost due to
Yeah,
Headley
if you
rollbacks?
count all the accumulations, that's quite a large number, obviously, over those many years, and that continues to grow as that number goes down, obviously.
Yeah, and the only way to do a reset back to the original 5.5 is through a vote to the public, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
welcome.
You have anything else for us?
That's it. That's
All right.
plenty.
Thank you, sir. Technology Services Director. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to keep this very brief today. We met last month with auditors through the state of Michigan, through the front of the court audit that we're mandated to go through every 3 years. This last meeting was basically a review and assessment of vulnerability scanning that their contractor conducted on the environment here at Eaton County. Upon the conclusion of that meeting, the discussion was held about the scanning tools and products that they use to scan, not just Eaton County, but all counties that go through that scan, of the state of Michigan providing those tools to entities throughout the year, not just during the time of audits that occur every 3 years. That way it would allow every organization to essentially keep pace with the work that we're doing. Not, you know, Eaton County is fortunate. We've already invested in some of the tools, but not all of the tools. So we're able to keep pace with the tools that we have, but the tools that the auditors are using are definitely more advanced than what we've had optics to in the past. So in short, they were open to that mindset and thought process, and they were going to go back to the state of Michigan to see if that's something that they could basically incorporate in their program going forward to allow, you know, entities that have FOC operations to provide those scanning tools long term. Update on the AT&T contract. I brought that to you a couple months ago, where AT&T was essentially updating their fee schedule, if you will, for analog lines. We were essentially going to be on the hook for roughly just shy of $40,000 a month for a few of the analog lines that remain here, basically for your elevators and a few non-emergency lines going into central dispatch. Happy to report 2 weeks ago, we were able to get the elevator lines completed. That task is done, and those old lines associated with those 4 elevators have been terminated, so that liability has been shed now. The circuit for the central dispatch lines, that's supposed to be turned up at 5 o'clock tonight, but equipment is scheduled to start 9 a.m. Monday morning next week. So that's still a work in progress. Hopefully by next month, I'll be able to report that that is completed, then that whole liability is completely shed from here. Aerial imagery update, really no status change on that. The vendor is still assessing and processing the imagery that was collected last month for our Tri-County flight. I suspect that we'll have some sample imagery hopefully next month to share with you all, just to show you what that product is going to look like, and full delivery will likely occur. I'm going to speculate probably August, September, October timeframe. Security awareness training, I haven't provided any updates on this in a while, but our latest campaign, roughly 430 emails were sent out to staff. 21 of staff, clicked the bait, if you will, or took the bait, if you will, which is okay. 84 staff, though, as to date, reported the phishing email, so that's good. So these trainings are definitely effective. They're working. There's somebody here that reported it, so I appreciate that. But we've seen this in the past, though, too, where when these trainings are initially offered a year ago, we had some pretty high completion rates, and we're seeing a repeat of a trajectory down of completion of those. There's a lot of factors that are going into that. Conditions here at the county, things on your mind. There's staffing changes. I get it, but the point is we're going in a downward trend of that. We don't have policies stating of an enforcement measure to monitor that. It's, kind of at your will, take it. We encourage it, but there's no enforcement behind it. But any questions? That concludes my report.
I guess you did a good job, Eric.
One quick
Oh,
comment.
okay.
Thank you for the call out and the kudos there. My 8-year-old thinks he's smarter than me with these kind of things, so I can show him this on YouTube and prove my knowledge.
One thing I did want to say too is, during last night's storm event, we did suffer a power outage here on the complex, and happy to report that, all the infrastructure held as it should, the battery backups, facilities management, making sure that, generators are properly serviced and up to date and working. Everything worked flawlessly. We lost, one piece of equipment for a brief amount of time, but was able to recover and continued operations. So just wanted to share that.
Eric, speaking with the sheriff this morning, he said Delta Township got hit pretty hard. Did our remote station up there hold up just fine?
It did. It actually lost power as well during the transition of power going down at that facility. Main power to the building goes down. Network equipment transitions to a UPS battery backup, holds the load until the building generator turns on. So everything worked flawlessly.
Good. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Eric? Comments? Anyone?
I'll just mention that this morning I did receive an email from our liability property insurer to let me know if we had anything that we could report it right away. But we usually go through a whole assessment. It would be any property that the county has that we would turn in any claims, just so you know. But it is nice they reached out first thing, knowing that Eaton County was hit pretty hard.
All right, thank you, Connie. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate your report.
Before we move on to Communications Director report, we did not actually move the L4046 report. We need to move that for the
We
board.
do need to move that.
Sorry, all of the reports from Mr.
Bring
Vandermark.
Tim back up.
Well, I'll move him as a slate.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Support.
Support, moved and supported. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, thank you. Thank you, Melissa, I appreciate that. Okay, moving on, item 9, Communications Director, Logan.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Web analytics are still par for the course. We're getting close to being able to benchmark month-to-month engagement. We need to get through June, basically, and then I can look at quarters. And Clarity does a nice quarterly comparison correlation, so look for a really nice report in July on that, on the website specifically. We did see a decrease in unique users, which is just individuals actually accessing the site, but we had longer time spent on any given interaction, and a lot of that being on FAQ pages like the Public Safety Millage page last month. Scroll depth also increased, which means they're spending more time on those pages they're interacting with. Performance score, though, has remained the same, which means we still have a lot of work to do on JavaScript errors and other things like that to make sure that every page is functioning as it should. I've also reached out to Civic Plus because sometimes, and I've received some complaints from other departments, some of our internal page interaction when we're working with modules or adding things to the site, it gets very, very slow and sluggish and kind of glitches out a little bit. So we're going to try and figure out what that is. Of course, internet has a lot to do with that too, but typically that's isn't our problem. So more on that later. As for social media, we did see an uptick in follower engagement versus non-follower, which means that's a positive sign showing that the algorithm is pinging the people that have followed us, so they're seeing the information we're sharing. But there was a decrease in those non-followers looking at our site, et cetera. Meta is prioritizing essentially paid content, which they're a business, so that makes sense, but we're not doing paid content, so we have to combat that with, more interesting information sharing. You'll also see in your report Meta benchmarking as well, just showing that, we're kind of on par with other government sites on social media, typically when it comes to what we post, how we post, and who is interacting with it by the numbers. You'll also see within your packet, moving away from social media, kind of a breakdown of the major media inquiries that came in over that last month. Any questions on any of that? I know I kind of moved through that very quickly.
I don't see any questions.
Moving on here, so as I said last month and the month prior, I've been working on applications to state and federal offices to try and get funding for specific projects. So we did submit applications to pretty much all of our representatives with looking for ADA compliance infrastructure funding, security enhancements for the complex, mostly the courthouse itself. Getting power into Crandall Park, power battery backup that would tie into our solar array here at the courthouse, funding for the animal control building, and Bank County drain again as that major expense. I've had a lot of really great conversations with Congressman Barrett's office. I'm in contact with them weekly. They're asking some really great questions. There was a really nice federal nexus around burn discretionary grants at the federal level for that security enhancement piece here at the courthouse, which would mean a singular updated camera system, emergency lock, essentially button at the security desk, so if they see something incoming, they can actually lock the doors preemptively at the entrances, security tint on the windows, and then penetration and vulnerability testing on our servers for cybersecurity as well, and bollards at any entrance so vehicles can't necessarily try and drive in. And so working with Barrett's office they've been very responsive. I'm cautiously optimistic, at least things are moving in the right direction for that. As for our other applications via them, they haven't sponsored those as of yet. I've also been working with Angela Whitwer's office, as is the controller's office, on a couple of funding sponsorships that she's doing for us at the state level as well. Specifically, Bank County Drain Project, she's asking for $10 million that would go directly to the residents of that district. There's some nuances as to how that would work should they get funding for that. And then also the Eaton County Animal Control Building, $2.5 million. You know, we obviously don't know the future of some services here, but that is still a county asset. And so I'm working with Angela Whitwer's office to determine if we were to get funding for that building, what can we do? You know, and there's some nuances there too. She's also sponsoring several other, not at the county level, funding opportunities for Eaton County in general, including the Horner Mill site in Eaton Rapids. But I'm in direct contact with her office as well. They've been fantastic to work with too. Any questions on the funding application piece?
Commissioner Moody.
Logan, when we're talking grants through state, federal government, you know, the one thing that really gets me is the restrictions. Even if you get the grant, there's restrictions on it that it can only be used for certain things. Is that kind of infuriating to you or challenging?
Yeah,
you say?
it can be frustrating. You know, like,
Frustrating, that's the word.
yeah, you know, for instance, the security enhancement piece, and I work closely with the sheriff's office, technology services, facilities, they were fantastic. And shout out to Chad and Eric for dealing with my frantic messaging and calls for questions I didn't have answers to. But so the way that I structured that application is there's specific line items for major projects, and they all have a price tag. And so working with Barrett's office and to determine, you know, it doesn't mean we're going to get funding for all of those line items, but hopefully we can, depending on if it's new construction, if it's a third-party vendor. There's some other nuances as to what is allowed to be funded, basically. Burn discretionary grants, though, through the Department of Justice are very flexible, so that's good. So that was an easy federal nexus to identify. And so we have a lot of wiggle room, which was why I think Barrett's office is a little optimistic about our chances.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Logan, do you have anything else for us?
Just really quick, just to touch on the public safety millage and the information sharing effort there. Obviously, that millage did not pass, but I did want to express my thanks to the offices here and elected officials who went out and spoke and shared information on this. And I'm not talking about any of the vote yes volunteering that occurred that was outside of what the county could do. But I wanted you guys to know that a large part of my day is still responding to residents that are calling or messaging me, asking questions about potential cuts, what services are going to be impacted. There is some fear there is some anger there, and there is also just curiosity. So just please know I'm in direct contact with a lot of residents, and they are watching, and they are curious, and they are inquiring still.
And along that line, do we have a page on our website that addresses that directly, or
Addresses them being able to.
the failure of the millage?
No, not right. I've begun a sort of post-mortem report kind of analysis, which I wasn't sure if this body would want to see in the future next month. But there is a direct correlation for them to message me directly or message communication@eatoncounty.org if they have inquiries. But there is no page talking about
Okay.
what's specifically happening. But we can definitely develop something like that.
All right. Yeah, I think as we move along in our budget process, we might want to start doing that. All right. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Commissioner Haskell.
I guess in the meantime, agreeing with Chairman Drosha, even if we don't have that page out there, it would be nice to know what are the frequent questions coming in. So even if that's like an email to the board on like, hey, guys, I'm hearing a lot of this, expect this in the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be cool. Thank you.
I would like to comment something. Okay, I just want to say to Logan, I think that the communication, as far as getting it in the Delta Talk of the Town every single month, the flyers that you had, the webpage, the way it was set up with the calculator and things, I think it was really well done. I mean, we offered the opportunity for education, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Can I add one thing? I just would like to say for your media coverage for the month of April, I think I counted about 36 articles and touch points. And so for perspective, when we did not have a communications apparatus, it's not that people didn't want to know what was going on at the county. They just didn't have access to the resources to be able to make it happen. So when you look at that, I want you to just think that there were probably 4 to 5 coordinating calls, checking with elected officials, see who was available, setting up times, places, providing supporting information that went into every one of those. So it's one page in your packet, but do know that represents a significant investment of time, to Jeannie's point, to increase transparency, educating the public. And Logan's done a lot to build a communication structure. It hasn't existed, but apart from people following our social media, subscribing to our newsletter, and attending these meetings, the legacy media is one of the best ways to make connections and connect with the public. And when we don't have a budget to do it, what you're looking at right there, if you were to put a value on what that would have been as cost media, the budget would have been huge. So I want to thank you for helping to coordinate that and spearhead that, because conversations like that with the public, no matter the outcomes, they just need to continue to be a part of, I think, the pillar of county administration, so that people know what we do and what's going on.
I'll also add quickly a huge shout out to Prosecutor Doug Lloyd, Sheriff Reich, and Chair Mott, but especially Prosecutor Lloyd for taking my early morning text, being like, do you want to go on the radio at 7 a.m. tomorrow? So they got out to get that information out, and they were more than willing to do it. Sheriff Reich was here very late on election night doing interviews just to spread information as much as he could.
Thank you, Logan. All right. If there's nothing else on item 9, let's go to item 10, Human Resources Director.
All right, everybody. So we'll start out with the positions update. So before you is the same sheet that we've had it. I added a new category of tracking. The on-hold status has been there, but I just went ahead and designated it so that you could visually see it clearly how many positions we have on hold. With everything going on, the positions at the Sheriff's Department Road Patrol have been put in an on-hold status. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. A couple other highlights. We had our 9 deputies in field training complete their FTO status. So you'll notice that tracking that program is significantly smaller than it was last month. And that represents a year and a half of investment and time in getting those folks through the academy and transition through our FTO. So they successfully completed that. We filled 2 positions this month. We have 14 positions posted. 6 of those are ongoing requisitions with the Sheriff's Office, Youth Facility, and Parks and Rec. There's 1 open position within the administrative wing that we will be recommending, and there are elected updates on the report for you to review. So the only action we would need from you all is approving the recommendation for the 1 Central Dispatch Public Safety telecommunicator, which is funded through the 911 millage.
Any discussion on that position? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right.
And then I'll just do a quick general update. Everything I talk about at this junction every month still remains true, but I'm going to try to be a little more abbreviated with it. And you talk about the loss of talent and a missing FTE on a report represents hours of staff time to post a position, evaluate resumes, review references, interview candidates, and then once you hire somebody, having 6 to 12 months to onboard them. So as we talk about where we're at, this pressure is fought by Eaton County, and we have high turnover, and that carries a cost for the remaining staff to cover the gaps of the vacancies. So this month, our vacancy ratio notched up to 12.68% from where it was last month. And that's of our budgeted positions that remain open and unfilled. The 12-month average for that vacancy ratio is 12.73. We have a difficult path ahead of us, and as such, I just want to take a moment to talk to the public and members of this body. So we have a budget through September 30th, 2025, but as things begin settling and if employees choose to leave before then, we will see a reduction in the service capacity that we are able to provide leading up to that fiscal year. So while this body may not make personnel reductions until the new fiscal year, I think it's important for the public to understand that as we navigate our new staffing levels and don't necessarily come back and backfill positions that may be in jeopardy of change, there will be a reduction in services. So residents may have to wait longer for certain things than they are used to. There might be less availability in terms of hours. And that is not a direct action. That is an indirect action as people maybe choose to leave before November 1st. So I just wanted to have that discussion here. Trial courts, I wanted to give a shout out. Kathy Rooks will be leaving us. We're going to be doing a retirement resolution next week. It's a real loss for the court. The position's been posted, but just want to thank her for her years of service. While we're doing a retirement resolution, since she's not eligible retirable by MERS, we're listing it as a separation on this report, but I do want to acknowledge and just thank her for her service to the county. For prosecutor, his positions are still on hold. As we stated in the past, difficult time to hire staff when there's uncertainty about what your staffing levels will look like in the coming fiscal year. You'll see at the end of my report, prosecutor's here to present a retention plan for his office. This is utilizing one-time state grant funds that the Board of Commissioners approved last October. Prosecutor Lloyd will present a framework of how he sees this money being most impactful for his office in the coming months. Animal control, we had another resignation, so we are down 2 of 3 FTEs in that role. So this is an example of a service that people are going to feel because we do not have the staff. It was difficult enough with only 2 of 3, which wasn't enough staff to begin with. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Sheriff Department update, there are 2 correction vacancies, 1 jail EMT. Road Patrol, there's 7 vacancies. We have 1 in FTO. That just entered FTO from the academy. So in terms of coverage, they're operating from the perspective that they're currently 8 spots down. And that number is higher if you consider anyone on medical leave or planned time off. Given the uncertainty with decisions, I mentioned the road patrol positions have been put on hold. It means they're just not actively recruiting for those budgeted positions at this time. Considering it takes about 1.5 years, that makes sense. Drain Commissioner, we received questions from Deputy Drain Commissioner Marcus about positions and structure in Richard's office. So we may have an update for staffing next month at Ways and Means meeting, but it will take continued discussion to kind of get a sense what they're thinking. And that is my positions update.
Moving on.
So next we've got OPEB. And so this is a little different what we've usually done. Usually we just present the report and then we move and accept the report that our actuaries do on the valuation of this legacy benefit program. For those, your first time through, this is discussion about the long-term liability associated with retirees' health, which is known legally as the other post-employment benefit. So it's commonly referred to as OPEB. So that's the acronym. This year, what we would like to do is actually have the board approve the assumptions that they're going to be using in advance and adopt those so that when you see the report, you're already familiar with how they went about calculating what they think our long-term liability is. I think it's a 10-page document. I don't want to go through it exhaustively, but I'll highlight just a couple pieces. You see a reduction of 1 year for the amortization period, which makes sense because we're moving forward in time. And then the level dollar amount used is just to try to standardize the cost as you have inflation and other cost factors that impact evaluation of assets year to year. You have the assumed rate of investment return, which is at 6.25%, and that's compounded in their evaluation. And then they estimate the rate of inflation is 2.5 over that period of time. Salary rates are determined based on like the age and how long somebody's been with the county. There's a table there. And then mortality rates, which is an example of a metric that significantly impacts our forecasted expense. And the mortality rates that they use are based on our population data. It's not the mortality rate at the national level. It's specific to who's in the benefit plan. And for members of the public, Retirees Health is a closed group, meaning it's not an active thing available for employees. We do have employees working here that qualify because they were here prior to '07. However, it is a closed group. So when we look at this, that's how we evaluate the cost. So the requested action would be, you've all reviewed the actuarial assumptions listed in the packet that will be used to develop the 2024 valuation of the Retirees Health Benefit, and you adopt GRS using them as they run our valuation.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept? Okay, moved. Second. Any discussion? Any questions, comments? I have a question, Ben.
Yeah.
How accurate are these assumptions?
That's a good question. It depends, right? So, I mean, we've seen inflation has had a cooling effect, but then the first quarter GDP growth in the U.S. contracted, which was the first time since 2022. So while actuarial math is a science, it's a soft science because you make estimates in 1 year that has to get evaluated again the next year, which is why we do these annually. I didn't see anything that jumped out of me as a red flag when I was reviewing these. This will also be similar to what's going to be in the MERS evaluation report, so they're very similar in how they're approaching it. So the two factors that would impact us the most is the mortality estimates and assumptions, and then the return on investment, because those two have a real compounding effect over the life. So even a reduction of like 0.25 in the investment ratio, that's significant because that loss of compounding earnings has to get made up by employer-required contributions. So those are the two big ones. I'm comfortable based on my analysis of it, but it's a good question. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, because everything's set in stone with this economy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, all those in favor of accepting this, say aye. Any opposition? All right, thank you, Ben. Now we're moving on to item C.
Yeah, so next is MERS retirement credits for military leave. We already have a standing practice, and we have MERS as a pension administrator, so their board will adopt rules to manage not just our pension, but all employers. So they adopted a set of rules that more finitely defined how this process is done. We selected out of the ones that they had what we already do. So this isn't a change from practice. To give you perspective, if somebody goes on a 6-month leave because they're in the reserve forces and they come back, those employees would have the option to pay their required contributions over that 6 months so that for pension purposes, it was like they never left. And that's what we preserved in this process. If the employee comes back and says, I don't want to front the money for that, that's their option. They just would have a gap of 6 months when it comes to calculating their pension benefit. And this applies only to military service, which has unique protections under both federal and state law.
Okay.
So the action we would be requesting is members of the Ways and Means Committee authorize us to sign adopting this formal representation of what we've already been doing.
Make a motion to approve this.
Thank you. Any second? Or support? Supported, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, item C is done.
All right, so next up is prosecutors, state grant, additional support for prosecutor's office, review of use and framework for funding. Doug, if you wanted to come up, and I don't know if you're roping Chris in, you're welcome to drag him up here too. But so this item is for the prosecutor's office. I'll give a brief overview. At the end, we'll ask the body, this body to recommend to the full board adoption of the framework that Prosecutor Lloyd's about to present. A couple things. This is one-time state granting that was awarded not this fiscal year, but last fiscal year. There was a delay in direction being given to Prosecutor Lloyd's office on how to utilize these funds. It was given at the 11th hour, so we've been putting this together as quick as we can. This framework was, the funds were already authorized. So essentially, Doug's here to present what he'd like to do, and then we would move the framework so that you are aware how he's moving forward to use the funds. And with that.
Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Name is Doug Lloyd. I am your Eaton County Prosecutor. Just to give you a brief history of what these grants are, a few years ago, over a decade now, MIDC was created, which was the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. And with that, the state began basically funding defenders across the state. At that time, my association, or association I'm a part of, the Prosecutors Association, began talking to legislators in regards to why is it that you are funding one half of the process, the defenders, but yet you require the local counties to fund the prosecutor's office. And we saw a great disparity happening in the amount of money that the defenders were beginning to receive compared to what our local counties could actually produce. So this conversation continued with the legislatures until 3 years ago. It was basically put into the governor's budget and into the legislative budget that the top 10 worst cities within the state would receive funding, which would then include whatever city that was in the county would, receive the funding for those particular prosecutor's office. And they were, limited to the first 10, the top 10 the first year, and the top 15 the second year. Well, fortunately, those of y'all who know me know that I was complaining to our legislators constantly that Eaton County, was just as important as these 15, communities that were receiving money, most of which, to not be partisan, but I was using it, were Democrat communities. And, so I was making the argument constantly that just because I am a Republican prosecutor does not mean that I should not receive funding as well. Our community needs the money just as much as other communities do. And we got lucky for a short period of time that our House representative and our state representative were both placed on the appropriations committees as chairs, which is, very anormal for any county, within the state. And so, because I do have a great working relationship with them, because my actions as prosecutor are not partisan, they're about doing the right things for our community, I was able to bend their ear constantly. Not that I wasn't doing it before, but I took advantage of the opportunity then. And a special line item was placed into the budget for last year, which awarded the 15 counties the money they would receive, which breaks out to about $1 million each for each of those 15 counties. But there was a special line item placed in that Eaton County would receive $250,000. Considerably less than the $1 million, but I have to look at it that I'm also not in the worst 15 cities in the state. So we have to take the good with the bad there. And the hope is that we would continue to see, and this has been the fight that I have made at the legislature as a past president of the Prosecutors Association, I've made this, that we would continue to see this money from the state continue to more communities and more prosecutors' offices across the state. I'm not sure we're going to see that, so I look at this moment as it was a one-time funding. So my chief assistant, Chris Anderson, and myself began discussing when this was awarded, what would we do with it? Now, the problem became is that there is a word within the legislation that is causing Treasury to have difficulty of wanting to release the money for the other 15 counties. Finally, I got to the point of just being frustrated because I was on my own line item within the budget, and they finally agreed to release it, and that just happened last week. So it is really something that I must apologize to Controller Sobey, to Ben, and to Melissa, because Chris especially has been harassing them in order to get this on the agenda, and I appreciate the Ways and Means adding it to the agenda today. So with all that being said, that's why we're here. $250,000, one-time offer. So one of the first things that Chris and I looked at is, what is something that we can do for our community that will help the people that are coming to our office be able to deal with it. We are having less staff and less ability to communicate. And as y'all are aware, we moved to Carpel a couple years ago in order to try to be more transparent. Same as about 80 of the 83 county prosecutors have done across the state. And one of the items that they offer is a victim portal, and it allows more mobility. It allows my victim advocates to talk to people through text, through phone calls, through different ways, which one allows some protection for my victim advocates and allows my victim advocates when they are on the move throughout the county building to be able to communicate with the victims. But two, when I'm speaking about the type of victims I'm talking about, a lot of times I'm talking about victims that are also in a moving state themselves. They're not always having, secure housing. They don't always know where they're going to be next. But anymore, a lot of times, a phone is something that they will have. So knowing that they have the ability to commute with the victim advocates or communicate with my attorneys is important. So that's a subscription service, and because we're allowed to expand this out over 2 years, our goal is to do 2 years of the Victim Advocate Portal as part of Carpel, and then we will see where we are at as far as the budget. But my hope will be that as we meld the budget over these next couple of years, we'll be able to move that portion into my budget as well to continue that. Because I have a strong feeling I'm going to find that that is a very big asset for my office and allowing me to communicate with victims of cases. The second part that we looked at was retention. As y'all are all aware, some of you have been on the board, some of you are brand new, but I have been here for over a decade complaining about the pay that my attorneys receive, the difficulty that I have of actually recruiting attorneys, and the more difficult thing of retaining them, because once we train them to become the great attorneys they are, other communities that are paying more, and y'all are all aware because I've mentioned them more, time and time again, are taking them away and giving them more money and requiring them to do less work. And that is happening not only at my legal assistant level, my victim advocate level, but my attorney level as well. So the decision was made that since it was a one-time fee and I have been down 2 legal assistants and 2 attorneys for over a year and have watched the employees who have stayed bust their butts on a daily basis, go home exhausted, both physically and mentally. I've watched them cry, I've watched them be angry, I've watched them be frustrated. I'm probably no different than any other department head here, but I have the podium so I can express it from my point of view. But I've also watched them the next morning walk back in the office and do it all over again. And it's kind of a joke, but the only thing I tell them I can offer them is, a hug, an attaboy, a pat on the back, because with the failure of these two millages, I can't seem to offer them anymore. But I can't afford to lose them. I have a minimal level of requirements. You know, I'm a mandated official, a constitutionally elected officer. But I'm not going to be able to do my job if you were to look at me and go, well, yeah, you and the chief or chief assistant are mandated, so we'll just have an office of two. You are going to watch just a complete blow up of the criminal justice system. And so while I am below the staffing that I actually feel I need in order to be a properly ran office, the individuals that I have, I cannot afford to lose. So with the help of Melissa and Ben and the creativity of Chris, we came up with the idea that we would offer a one-time retention amount of 12% to the employees based on the level of where they are at, top of the level classification of whatever class they are at. And that would be effective September 12th, I believe Melissa stated would be the day. And with that, we want to get it in before this budget cycle ends, which would be obviously September 30th. But the retention, with the help of Ben, and Chris, was created that it will be a 6-month retention, that you'll receive the bonus now, but you'll have to agree to take the bonus. And if you do, if you leave within the 6 months, then it's a prorated amount and you have to pay that money back. It's a similar thing that the unions have done and that you have signed off before. That right there takes the $250,000, maximizes it pretty much to the penny. It incorporates the requirements pretty much of what Melissa needed in order for it to be a net neutral grant. Is that fair to say, Melissa? Okay, all right. Yes, because I know that's an important thing that we should, if we're doing grants or taking money, we should be making the effort that that it's a neutral grant, that everybody's getting paid, including administration who has to do the work. And so that's what we're attempting to look at here. So that is my plan. I was given a week extension. It was actually due last week, so it's due, even though they only gave it to me 3 weeks ago. It was due this last Tuesday, or today actually, and they gave me a week extension, so I'm here today, and I'll be here Wednesday night, but I would ask for you to move this along. Does it require the full board, Ben? Yes. Controller says it requires a full board, so I'd ask that you motion this and move this along and allow me to, while below where I need to be, at least stay at a level of staffing that I can attempt to serve the citizens of this county.
Thank you, Doug.
I'll just add one thing. So the
expect
requested action would be Ways and Means move this framework and application to the full board, authorizing prosecuting attorney and administration to work together to implement the plan as presented if approved by Treasury, but giving the allowance for guidance to modify it in line with the intent and spirit of the plan as presented today. If Treasury comes back and says that we need to make modifications, it wouldn't have to come back if we need to change a date or adjust the amounts. And if employees don't stay that full 6 months and have to pay back, or people leave before September 12th, the plan was to use that as a recruitment for that position. So it would be the same pool of money recycled, but hopefully we keep everybody through March, and hopefully we can keep them longer than that. So.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have a motion? All right, moved and supported. Any further discussion? Commissioner Haskell.
Given the timeline that you have and the board meeting being next week, are we concerned about needing another week extension from Treasury, or is it okay that we're taking action now?
No, I mean, I think Ben will follow up because he always gets the last word. But no, I mean, because I have to give some shout outs. Melissa, Ben, and Chris worked very, Ben was thrown into the, well, Connie was thrown into this on Wednesday, and then Ben was thrown into it, Wednesday afternoon. And Ben and Chris and Melissa worked a hard 24 hours, and I have a 19-page document that I'm confident that if the only thing we will need to add is the resolution or whatever the approval piece is that you would do on Wednesday night, we would add that, and I will be able to submit it all on Thursday.
I just wanted to make sure that the final approval didn't need to be this week. That was, okay.
You're good. Yeah, Doug was able to get it extended to Thursday morning next
Okay, Thursday next week, okay.
22nd.
Understood. I thought it
full
was.
board. We'll just need to make sure Jim signs it at the full board. Not that that's a problem, that's staff making sure it's in his packet to sign, so we got you.
Thanks to staff for moving it so quickly. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, motion on the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, thank you very much. Doug, before you disappear,
Yes, sir.
I want, if you would briefly address, there's some speculation in our county that because we might possibly have a reduction in our public safety because of the failure to pass the millage, that crime will go down and you don't need as much staff as you have. Would you like to respond to that?
Really, is that crime will go down? Well, I will add a little response because I do have a toxic trait to go on Facebook and read comments occasionally, and and then it does not take long to realize why you don't want to have that trait, and I get off of Facebook. But there's a lot of comments that are made that, well, gosh, we don't need police, everybody should just own a gun and they'll take care of business themselves. Well, former Senator Rick Jones actually created a law that allows you to protect yourself in your home, but it doesn't give you a right to just pull out a gun whenever you feel like it and just shoot somebody, because there is a difference. Part of it is self-defense, but the other half of that is called murder. And, the one thing that I have been telling people in the community who have been asking me, when they're going, well, what are you going to prosecute? I always say that violent crime is going to be the first thing I prosecute. And so while the amount of service calls are, I can only gather, going to go down when you are losing, when you are losing the sheriff's department, or the sheriff's department is reduced. If there's less officers on the road, there's less officers that are going to be able to take calls. But, I believe that they are on the same page I am, that the first priority calls they're going to take are violent offenders. And so while I believe that people may think things will become easier, I'll give an example. I was at a local business on West Saginaw up in Delta Township, and he was talking about how cars were just racing up and down, that in his opinion and he's been the manager of this business for decades, and that, he just felt that, he was concerned about the loss of just, police because of what happened recently on MLK in the city of Lansing. You had the drag race there that ended up with 5 or 6 individuals ending up in the hospital, and one actually dying because people decided to drag race down MLK in the city of Lansing. So, unfortunately, do I see things like that occurring potentially because people feel that the services aren't going to be there? But I can guarantee you my thoughts from my office that violent offenses are always going to be the first things that we look at in prosecution. And unfortunately, though, it's going to be the other things that we're going to be taking a hard look at to determine, do we have the actual manpower? And so I really think that crime's not going to go down. What's going to go down is that people are going to find out that there are only so many officers and there are only so many hours in a day. And so when their car window got broken into and they want an officer to come out and do a report because that's what their insurance company needs, that's probably one that, on a priority level is just going to keep getting bumped down as those domestic violences or those, home invasions where the people were home or those other felonies, are occurring.
All right, thank you, Doug. Okay. You're complete, Ben.
That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. On to item 11, Finance Director, Melissa.
Good morning. So I have before you the monthly financial report for the general fund, and not much has changed from last month. I will note that you'll notice several of our state and federal revenues are down compared to last year. That is simply because they have not been assigned to the right account. That is an internal issue, not anything that has not been completed. So we are still receiving those revenues. They just have not been recorded to the revenue accounts. So that will be cleared up next month. We are halfway through the fiscal year, and as you can see, many of our departments are are halfway through their budgets as well. Compared to prior years, you can tell that there is position savings. So, are there any questions about the financial report? Okay. Then I will move on to our health insurance report. Again, not much has changed on the monthly health insurance report. You will notice this is 2 quarters worth of reporting. However, we only have 1 quarter worth of settlement data for the current fiscal year, so there is some potential savings that will happen in that. So, are there any questions on the health insurance report? Last but not least, I have our child care fund report. You'll note that chargebacks are projected to be over budget. We continue to monitor that from administration. And as we approach the end of the fiscal year, we may need a budget amendment. However, there should be savings within other programs to account for that. So Connie and I continue to monitor that. So, are there any questions regarding the child care fund report? Okay. That concludes my reports then.
Thank you. Item D, capital improvement bonding.
I'm back. All right, so I'd like to invite Dale Days, our financial advisor from PFM, and then Steve Mann, bond counsel from Miller Canfield. I don't have my glasses, so if one of you aren't here, I'm sorry. But, oh, no, you're both there. Great, great. So today, we just have for your review, the first item's the updated timeline, which is very similar to what we had before. I think we just had 1-day extension based on when we were able to publish our notice of intent. The second is the capital improvement bond specifications, which is an outline of the framework needed at this junction. As previously, the treasurer and administration recommended, the specifications are essentially the 20-year period competitive sale process for getting the best market interest rate, and then up to $12 million for the amount of the cost above Bank County, with the option for the board to levy up to the $12 million for capital improvements. And then the last is a resolution authorizing the issuance of those. So with that, that's the lay of the land, and I leave it to you guys. Come on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So you have before you the resolution which authorizes the issuance of the bonds. It contains, Section 6 contains what the actual bond form will look like when issued. Section 7 is the form of the notice of sale that will be published before the competitive sale. As Ben mentioned, the timeline is before you as well. The timeline essentially is once the referendum period expires on June 10th, then the bonds will be marketed and sold in late June and will close in mid-July. The resolution delegates the authority to hold the bond sale and for the administrator, the controller, and the treasurer to do everything that's necessary to issue, award, and close on the bond issuance without coming back to the county commission once the resolution is approved, presumably next Wednesday night. With that, Dale and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from anyone? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to accept?
It would be, I was going to say, administration's requesting Ways and Means Committee to adopt a resolution authorizing administration and the chair to move forward with the county bond offering as outlined. This includes both the bond specifications and the resolution authorizing the capital improvement bond.
So, that's very good, Commissioner Barber. All right, we're on the same page. Any further discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right, motion's passed.
Thank you guys for coming in.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. We have more if you'd like to stay, yes. Okay, so we are now on item 12, is that correct, Ben?
Is correct. Chad, Eric, if you guys want to come to the podium. So I'll just do a brief discussion. We presented this CIP last month, so you all had time to review it, the 32-page document, and it goes through our estimated expenditures for infrastructure over 25,000, trying to have a 6-year plan model. These are very standard in the state of Michigan. They were not standard at Eaton County. We did a draft last year that wasn't formally adopted. This year, we'd like to adopt it, even though we know that these projects might change. We might have to make budget changes, and when we do those, we would amend this plan. So no, it's a fluid piece. But the intent is to give guidance to our directors to understand these are the marching orders until you hear otherwise, kind of a thing. So I welcome any questions and anything you two want to add related to this. Yeah.
The only thing I would note too, the importance of doing this, and it's something we should have done before. Those of you who've been here saw that little spreadsheet, the one that's in the packets, the Public Improvement Fund. That's really all we've done. This gives an overview of all of the county properties, and it outlines what they're looking to do in the future and what we need. So this document is something that we can send whenever we go out for any type of a bond issuance. Standard & Poor's asked for a copy of this, even though they knew it wasn't adopted. We would send that to them formally. It does help with our bond rating to have something like this. I just want to note that.
It's a good thing to know.
The only thing I would add is, like Connie mentioned, this should have been done a long, long time ago. If you look at most counties on their website, they have their capital improvement plan. Most, if not all, I think, and it's a requirement by the state. It doesn't specify the detail of the report, which is why I think we got by in the past. But if you look at most of the counties in the state, they have a comprehensive plan similar to this.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, support, thank you. Are we gonna look at this kind of like the county's master plan, but for capital improvement? Okay, so these are just things we want to get done. All right, all right. Commissioner Haskell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you are implementing this plan, if you have to contract out or reach out to any vendors, is it the responsibility of your individual departments to actually reach out to those vendors? Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, it's passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm next, so I'm gonna stay right up here.
You sure you don't want to sit down and then come back? No.
Well, good morning, Chad.
Good morning. Chad Powers, Facilities Director for Eaton County here. First, I wanted to just, not really a capital improvement piece, but Fox Park is closed until further notice due to the storm damage last night. I guess Gresham Highway is pretty rough shape, just getting up and down the road. And the park has got a lot of down trees, and the crews are out in Bellevue assessing that area. I haven't got a report on that yet, but I just wanted to pass that along. And then also related to the storm, and Eric touched on a little bit when he spoke earlier about the generators. I mentioned last month or previous month that we do a third-party evaluation and reports of several of our building functions, fire alarms, sprinklers, fire extinguishers, generators is also one of those. So we completed that earlier this week. We have 6 buildings with generators: courthouse, central dispatch, youth facility, and then we have 2 generators at the jail. One of our generators at the jail failed the test. It's a load test third party puts on in case we had to go to generator power to ensure that that generator will in fact keep up with the load that it's required. The generator that operates for the A area of the jail, A, C, D area, excuse me, and then E is on a different generator. Failed, and so then the question is, why did it fail? So we dig into that. And it was determined that the radiator, we had a radiator issue with that generator. I've priced it. It's obviously an emergency situation. Yesterday with the predicted inclement weather, I met with the jail captain or the jail lieutenant and chief deputy to have a plan in case. In fact, we went to the generator, which we did last night, but we were fortunate. It was only for about 30 minutes. So had that generator overheated and shut off, we would have had to move inmates, and we had a plan in place, but it was obviously in the middle of the night is not the best options. So with that being said, I've priced a new generator, and I believe we're gonna add it to the budget amendments here at the end, or I don't know how that works, but the age of the generator, it's 1987 model. So, and most of you are familiar with generators. Home generators are the size of a small ice chest or whatever, the Generacs that you see. This is about the size of an SUV. The radiator is quite substantial. They don't make those parts anymore for a 1987 model. So what we need to do is take that generator out, or that radiator out, have it rebuilt, and bring it back. That's about a 2-week process. In the meantime, we need to have backup generator in case we have a weather event like we did last night. So we have to rent one and have it on standby in case we get to that situation. That whole process is about $35,000. So obviously wasn't planning for it, but it's essential and a requirement. Actually, we need to have our generators functioning, and we give a report to the jail, and that's part of their state requirements along with their other mandated parts of operating in a jail. So when I see a price tag like that, I look and see, well, how much is a brand new generator, right? That's about $180,000. And it would be substantially longer for a rental because we'd have to swap out the existing, or the process would take a lot longer. So that's all I really have on that, other than if we get it approved, Wednesday night, we'll get right on it and start the process next week. I can have a generator, a backup just about any day, and we'll start that process. So.
Because of the delay on this, Chad and I are asking that be added to the budget amendment listing. That was not included originally, so.
Thank you. And that's coming up.
Correct.
So we don't need to make a motion on anything right at the moment, correct? Okay, all right. All right, any other good news, Chad?
Is there any questions on that piece before I move on?
Mr. Haskell?
The funding for this, does this come out of general fund, or can it come out of the jail millage, or?
Jail millage is what we would recommend.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Holmes?
I was wondering, what's the breakdown on the repair cost and the rental of that $35,000?
The radiator repair piece is about $20,000, and then another $15,000 for the rental. The reason being that, and that was for a month, and we may save a little on that, but I wanted to err on the side of caution. That requires a licensed electrician to hook it up and disconnect it, so that's where some of that cost comes.
Maybe another question, compared to a radiator of a semi big diesel engine. What is this a larger, physically larger and stuff, or what?
It's not quite as big as a semi, but it would, are you talking about the existing one or the one, the temporary that we would rent?
Yeah, the one that's gonna need repairing.
Yeah, it's, so it's a 350 kilowatt, which is, 350,000
Yeah.
watt compared to your home generator. I might have those backwards, but a home generator is about 10,000 watt. So if you can,
I'm thinking of, I was involved in the repair of one out of a semi. We took to Grand Rapids, and I don't think it was anywhere close to that.
okay, I see what I thought you meant the ones that come on a semi-trailer, like a
Oh, no,
backup one. No, it's significantly bigger than a semi. I mean, it's,
the radiator itself, I'm
the
talking.
radiator itself is 7 foot by 7 foot, probably.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Chad? All right, Chad, anything else you want to tell us?
I do. Earlier this month or last month, I met with Clerk Bosworth and Treasurer Rynette and also Eric from Technology Services. And we took a look at the feasibility of moving some offices. Essentially, clerk's office would become the treasurer's office, and then the clerk would move to where the current treasurer's office is now. And Clerk Bosworth and Treasurer Rynette maybe want to speak more about the strategic planning for that, but it would allow a more streamlined approach from the clerk's office, the way I understand it. So I looked at from my side of things, what's that going to cost, right? It's pretty minimal. I would say $3,000 to $5,000, and I think it'd be on the low end of that. We just need to connect the current Register of Deeds to the current treasurer's office, which would be opening it up. Fortunately, we can do all that stuff in-house with our in-house maintenance staff. So I wanted to talk about that, and I think the other Clerk Bosworth will talk about it as well. So that's all I have for my report. If there are any questions, I can answer. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Diana.
All right, I think you're off the hook, Chad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. As you know, department heads were asked to look for ways to reduce costs, and since my departments have been down 3 positions since the last round of personnel cuts, we had to look for ways to do more with less. So this idea came to my attention, and I think it's a really good one. What I'd like to do is, like Chad said, swap offices with the treasurer's office and combine the Register of Deeds through a passageway so that we can cross-train staff in both offices and eliminate the problem I have with short staffing, especially in the Vital Records office. This can only happen because of the graciousness of Treasurer Rynette to move his staff to my office, so I thank him very much, and Chad's work to help this come to be. So we'll cross-train, which is going to be an amazing help for us because we've never been able to do that. I have 3 offices spread across the courthouse, and this is one way we can be more efficient and keep offices open should an entire office be sick. We can have people ready to come and run the other office. Just as good, this consolidation is going to allow me to go from 2 chief deputies in these offices to 1. So I'll eliminate 1 chief deputy position. And my Register of Deeds chief deputy, Lisa Nelson, will now oversee both the deeds and the Register of Deeds, and the Vital Records office. And that will allow Kim Morris to become more of a true election director, separate from the Vitals office that she's been having to be called into daily, weekly. She'll have her own area, and the election department has needed that for a very, very long time. So I can foresee many efficiencies and savings from this change. I'm really grateful to the treasurer for helping us and to Connie for offering this great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions for Clerk Bosworth?
And I just wanted to say normally we do the reclassification process, and so this body had made the motion and decision to close that unless it was part of a consolidation or change that led to position savings. So part of what Diana is talking about, when there's a formal plan for that together, it would come for you all to review. But that's what she's been looking for, is using that reclassification process as part of what she's working on.
Thank you for that clarification. I'd like to bring that information in June, along with some other cost reductions next month.
Commissioner Moudry.
Mr. Chair, I think this makes perfect sense. Having walked down that corridor there, it makes a lot of sense. And those that came up with this idea, kudos.
I have to give that to Connie Sobey. She's known this was a great idea for a couple decades, but it's never been feasible. We haven't been able to do it, and now the time is right, and thanks to the treasurer, it's the best time to do it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Just real, I will just add, I don't think we talked about, but we're looking to get this going here towards the end of June, so.
All right. Do we need to hear from the treasurer's office?
Good morning, Darius Rainette, County Treasurer. This will be somewhat of an inconvenience to move and things like that. Been there for a while, but if this is what needs to be done, me and my staff are happy to help in this particular situation to both save some money with the clerk's office and to streamline her operations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I would like to point out that we have discussed this at length, and there is some budgetary savings that Facilities Director Powers has identified. So there is not a budget amendment necessary in order to do this move this fiscal year. So.
Thank you.
The only thing I would ask is that you make a motion and we just have to go through here that the move take place, because you're authorizing Chad to do the work. You're taking care of the responsibility of moving now. Oh, of moving the offices. Sorry. I just asked that a motion be made to actually approve the move of the office. It doesn't have to go to the full board, but it takes action and lets everybody know that you've approved this. It's budget neutral, so.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that the move happen and we authorize Chad to do the construction.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposition? All right. We'll call 2 Men in a Truck. Oh, Chad said he'd take care of that, didn't he? All right, moving on. Before we go into item 13, 14, I'm going to recommend we take about a 10-minute recess, if that's all right. All right, we're going to All right, we will resume our meeting. We are on item 14, 24-25 budget amendments.
All right, so we have a couple of budget amendments for you today. The first is to increase our revenues, to acknowledge that we are now receiving adult use marijuana tax revenue. There are facilities located, or three facilities located in Eaton County, and the tax revenue from the state is based on a facility basis. So we did end up actually receiving this revenue already, so this is a budget amendment to acknowledge that. The next one is for our Parks and Recreation Department. Last week at Public Works and Human Services, we approved a project amendment. So this is a budget amendment to codify those changes to those projects. If there are any questions about the actual projects themselves, our Parks Director, Alex, is here if you have any questions, but.
Commissioner Barber.
Yes, I got a question about the adult use marijuana.
Oh, sorry.
How much, you said we have 3 dispensaries now. How much tax revenue, is it a set amount for each dispensary?
It is. So it's a set amount per dispensary, and it changes annually based on the amount of tax revenue that the state collects. So every year that will be adjusted. So there will be one more coming on the collections as well.
Yeah, so, but I mean, that's not a way to plan ahead for the budget, right?
No, you can't. So this is just acknowledging this year and not acknowledging necessarily anything for next year. There's a lot going on with adult use marijuana, and so right now we don't know what the revenues coming in would be.
But we will have projections from the state on how much that is likely to be for next fiscal year. We will be including that in the budgetary process when we receive more information from the state.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Go through the rest of them?
Yep, so the next one is a budget amendment for the Grand Ledge DPW fund. Basically, we are just fiduciaries. We are holding these monies on behalf of Grand Ledge. And the budget, we are nearing the very end of this, so they are going to be paying us more money than we anticipated. So that is the budget amendment for this one. And then the last budget amendment is the Bank Intercounty Drainage District. There was one payment that was issued last year that we missed during the budgetary process. So we need to increase revenues and expenses for the drain debt service payment that will be going out on June 1st. Oh, yes, sorry, and I apologize. We are also going to add the $35,000 repair and maintenance expense for the generator from the jail millage. So that will increase the expense for the jail millage and increase the fund balance carryover for that fund.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Well, we should get a motion on the floor to accept this. Okay.
Support.
Support moved and supported. Any further discussion or questions? Did anybody want to question Alex about the parks thing? Okay, all right. Okay, that being said, all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? All right, it's been moved. Anything else, Melissa? Nope. All right. We are now on to item 15, miscellaneous. No miscellaneous. Okay, item 16, bills.
I make a motion to pay the bill.
Support. Moved and supported. Any discussion? Any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? On to item number 17, excuse me, 25-26 budget.
That's me. Okay, the first thing that we included in the packet is the multi-year projection that is up on the screen right now. This is the typical projection that we do utilizing what you were presented last month with additional updates of any revenue changes, tax revenue that Mr. Vandermark provided, and changes to some transfers in that are related to our cost allocation plan. Those went up due to the fact that Melissa finalized the plan this week, so we included that. So that's an increase in revenue from last month. And then the projections of salaries in every department as is currently with no changes. So that is showing you the projections at the very bottom of where our fund balance would be. So the questions that come out of this is, how are we going to get to a point when we're neutral, revenues balanced to expenses? So obviously, as you can see, the projected surplus deficit does not match this year and going forward. And all that does is end up causing our fund balance to go negative, which we can't do, so we have to make cuts. Again, these are always projections that we do. It's ever moving because we budget each position and each office every month for any change that occurs. So when we have a person who leaves employment, their benefits change, we structure it that way so that we make sure that we're not budgeting too much at any given time and you're given the most accurate information. So this is just the projection that we did. The next pages are the actual budget by function. This does not include the detail. If you look there, you can see the tax increase from last month was $217, and the transfers in was $266. And then you can see the reductions related to departments that changed employees and some of the other adjustments that we made. So it was a good change to the budget by about $900,000. So we can go on. If you look, you'll see each summary of the budget going forward. You can just scroll again, Logan. This is what you saw last month, but with the changes that we made, but this does not have the detail that you received in the book that we provided. So still look at that book and look at what makes up the departments. We're just not going to update this right now and give you that detail again at this point. So we have another meeting on May 30th, and we'll make sure that you have all the detail information for that. I want to go now to the exercise that we had offices do. So if you go to the mandated position allocation list, mandated, non-mandated. So this turned out to be a very difficult exercise in a number of ways. Number one, this is listed by position, not by service that's provided. So when you're looking at this as a department head, as an elected official, every single person or every single position has a person. They're all valuable. We've talked about that many times, that if you talk about mandated, non-mandated, necessary, required, everyone is going to believe they're required. You can say that every position potentially is attached to a mandate, because again, that goes back to what your serviceable levels have to be in a department. So you've heard the clerk, I use simple examples as far as a smaller department, but the clerk's office has mandates that she has to perform, and if she doesn't have staff to do that, then the reduction or the increased amount of time it would take for someone to receive service is what you suffer. So she's going to have to tell you, I can't have a cut, or I can't provide this service. So that's what you're going to expect next month, not at the meeting on the 30th, but next month, from departments as they start looking at arguing their budget. What we used to call budget hearings, we kind of got away from that, but I would consider these to be hearings where you're actually going to listen to what their needs are. And let's plan to listen, because they're going to have a lot to say. So what you see here is their attempt, and they did a great job, so everybody knows that. And there are some offices that put narratives in here that was not required, and we've had offices who indicate they want to add something. So this will be something that we'll continue to modify. I think now that we've gone through this and having meetings in my office, again, the position showing it's mandated, required, necessary was a really difficult, it's just a difficult exercise. So really what you need to know is when you look at this, that offices are all mandated. If it's not a state mandate or a federal mandate, it's a mandate like technology services. You heard Eric talk about having to do an audit for front of the court. That's a mandate, and then operating technology and ensuring that he can pass those audits, that's what we call necessary or required. So we need that. So these terms are, I'll say, complicated, to say the least. Ben might want to talk to that, for departments, again, to do. So really what we want to look at is every office and what their mandates are. Courts will show you that they have mandates. They've listed what the MCL is that requires that. The prosecuting attorney's office, Logan, if you can go down to the document that was provided. So keep going, just because it's a larger document. So Prosecutor Lloyd, one more down, sorry. Oh, it's not in here, the mandate, the large document? Well, way to go. So Prosecutor Lloyd provided what was done by the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan. And it shows every MCL for every constitutional responsibility that a prosecutor has. So that is not in here, obviously, but it's an exercise. We'll add it to our budget process where he's able to demonstrate these are the things that we have to do. Now you're going to have to consider what the serviceable level is for that office. And as you heard from him this morning, he's at capacity, right? Which is why the state had given that grant to try to retain employees and deal with caseloads so that they're not getting further and further behind. And you're going to hear that from every department. So I just want you to pay attention to this list to see the mandate, non-mandate, discretionary. And I'll note discretionary doesn't mean that it's discretionary as far as performing something, because it may be necessary or required related to paying something or providing some service. What it means is you could absorb that into another position. So again, it's a reduction of an office staffing level. You'll see that. I'll speak for every department. None of them want to see that happen. I think we know that. I think we heard from the public that they do want to see that happen in offices, including public safety, animal control, prosecuting attorney's office. So, but you're going to hear from them in June, and I think that's the most important piece that you need to work through. Logan, if you can go down to, I think it's the very last page of the document. Keep going. Okay. This is the story. So the first page that you saw was the history of the budget over the years and then projections going forward. So the one that says 516, no changes, that is the same thing that you looked at that first document. The other just had historical data on it. So what I did is took this, put it together so that you can see it side by side. Because the millage, what we had submitted both in November and then in May, both failed. So the focus on those was County Road Patrol not having a Delta contract, eliminating animal control, and making reductions in the prosecuting attorney's office. So last month or the month before, we listed dollar amounts for those departments and the reductions. Those are, obviously you're looking at these are gonna change, but this represents those changes. So it impacts revenue and it impacts expenditures. So if you look at the revenue, you'll see in this that the Delta Sheriff contract revenue is no longer there. It also reduces revenue within some of the other contracts that we have and grant for secondary road patrol that we have. Again, these are things that we'll be digesting through the process. The sheriff's going to come to you and tell you absolutely not, we can't do away with this. We'll go through that exercise, painful exercise. What you see under the expenditures starts with salaries, and you will see the reduction from 19 million in the first column to 14.4 million. So that's the reduction of all of that personnel. Obviously, it's a large reduction. If you go down to the next where it starts with supplies and other, the only thing that really changed in that 12.8 million to 12.4 million was supplies that were in the Delta contract. So you're really not seeing reductions throughout the county. Those would be things that would come later. Technology, the computer fund, I will say that Eric made $1 million cut from last year. Not sustainable, but Eric is very creative. Technology is very creative, and Nathan, and they did a lot of work with departments, and they made adjustments. Again, not sustainable, but recognizing the need to make adjustments, they were able to do that. We then put a factor on that to show a reduction, considering that we're reducing personnel, of only 2% of a reduction in the computer fund appropriation from the general fund. So I won't go into great detail because obviously I don't know technology as well as I should. But if we're going to reduce a large number of employees, we can expect that the technology will obviously be reduced. Doesn't mean staffing levels necessarily are reduced because you're still providing services externally as well as internally, but I'm just doing a projection to show that we're kind of keeping it the same level. Totally subject to change. Eric has not provided a projection that will actually give us better detail, but as we move forward through this process, he's going to have to. Anything related to support for any software used by the Sheriff's Department would impact these numbers. So Eric, when you look at this, don't consider this to be, you know, what you're gonna go forward with. The next line is, we've talked about that, it's the JCI project leasing, financing. This is what we refer to as solar. Obviously everybody's very upset about that. This is a tax exempt leasing program that we signed on to that was going to provide energy savings to pay for itself. So this is the payment made to that project. And you can see it changes each year. What it does I think it's in the 2031 year, it actually reduces down to a low level, which assumes that the county would then have to purchase equipment. It's an odd formula, kind of like drain financing. It reduces down in 2031 to say if you have to buy a chiller or something like that, that's the purpose of the whole financing package. But again, that's a payment that we have to make. We want to make sure that the board and the public knows that we do have a payment. The savings for that are within the budget. So it's within any departmental budget or building that we're saving energy. And I will say, and I've been saying it, it's not saving as much as we wanted. So it's not a budget neutral situation. And it's something we have to deal with now. I think if Chad from facilities, Eric from technology, Ben, Melissa, I were to sit down in a room today and go through that, we would not have recommended that to the board. So, can't change it, it's where we are, but full transparency, that's a situation that we're in. Capital improvement, you just approved the capital improvement plan, and that amount we had estimated, not knowing that the plan would be approved and not knowing what was going to be included, we added $1 million and then just a projection going forward of 2%. So this would be modified based on that plan. But I will tell you, as Ben mentioned, it's an ever-moving document. So if we get to the end of this budget, like you've done pretty much every year, or the board has done every year, you just reduce that $1,000 to zero because you can't afford it this year. So you're deferring that maintenance or that capital improvement another year, which, again, we have risk with that. You know that Chad just mentioned $35,000 for a generator. Those are the things that happen. Our big talking point has been elevator. One breaks, you've got to replace it, or you have to have a solution on how to get people to a second floor or a basement level. So that will change. The capital leasing, this number is definitely going to change. Melissa and I have looked at the vehicles, obviously, the leases that we have. This includes any piece of capital that runs through the county that we have to purchase. So again, that number can be reduced significantly, which I know it's 600,000. There's an offsetting amount that says proceeds from borrowing at the top, 290,000. That's an offset for our leases on vehicles. We're not bringing in any new vehicles now, so any of the sheriff's patrol vehicles that have been totaled due to the people who damage our vehicles, not to our officers, those are not included in this. We have just not replaced those. So we received insurance proceeds. We've held on to those, not knowing what would happen with public safety. Now is where we get into what happens with all of these reductions. Ben has met with MERS just last week? And Melissa and I were not able to attend that, but he got some good information. Some of it we'll go into later in the budget process. But they were not able to give us an actuarially valuated dollar amount that we would have to contribute. It's a little bit disappointing, but it's a big ask to say that you have a certain number of positions that you would eliminate or a department. It's choosing the positions that would be eliminated because obviously you're going to retain your senior employees. So that's a difficult exercise, and that's what we found in reviewing that, and Ben can speak to that if he wants to. He loves to talk. So, but what we did, as we did last month, is to include a payment of $3 million that we would have to put into MERS because we would no longer have positions that we would be using money from each position and each employee. So we're setting aside that amount of money. Again, subject to change. That's how the budget process works. We did the same with retirees' health. We added an additional $600,000. And again, we carried those through with just a % increase. The last thing that we did that was discussed, this was probably the whole thing was terrible exercise. The $3 million that you see as a negative, that would represent what would happen, or what we would need to cut to essentially stay budget neutral. So your revenues and your expenditures match. So in the first year, you come ahead by $480,000. In the next years, we would take the negative amount that's there, and those would be the cuts that would have to be made. So in the first year, the $3 million that we're talking about, we would have to take cuts, whether it be personnel from other departments, ongoing expenditures for contracts, anything moving forward that would be an ongoing expense. You never want to just cut one thing unless you know that it's going to create savings in future years. So that's what that shows you we would need to cut in order to maintain a $6 million fund balance. Again, that's another thing that we'll bring to you. That would be a fund balance policy, totally up to the board, but it's something that you can pass through to future boards so that they know what the consensus has been going forward or going past as to what you should retain as fund balance. So you can see the large cuts that the county would have to still make after reducing what we've talked about throughout this ballot proposal process. I know it's a lot to digest. It's a lot for me to digest. And I could tell you, how many spreadsheets do we have to have open to get information? Is it 30? It's like 30 spreadsheets that all interact and talk. And it's not as bad as actuarial science, but everything hits everything. So if you have an expense that has a revenue associated with it, expense goes down, revenue goes down. The same is true if an expense goes up, revenue would go up. So again, a lot to digest. I know you're going to have a lot of questions. I think the best thing for this committee and the rest of the board members to do is to look at this, get questions to staff that you have, suggestions that you might have from the materials we gave you last month. And then we have another meeting on May 30th, and that's when you would start to delve into this. And then that would go into what we talked about, budget hearings. So, did I say enough, Ben? Do you want to talk about MERS at all?
Sure.
You knew it.
I mean, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I'll just add to a few points. So for the solar project, we're about a third of our power bill in savings. So when we try to estimate what that looks like, and that's built into every budget, so it's not as tangible as you would like to see, but that's roughly what we're saving. We're still trying to advocate for the 1.3 million tax credit, and if we're able to have that discussion, because we get that through the Inflation Reduction Act, the proposal we've talked about is the idea of setting that aside in a dedicated fund that can only be used to pay these lease payments, and then flatten those payments to say $100,000 a year, and then just use that fund until it's expended, and then give the treasurer the chance to invest it, and then we can use those proceeds to try to flatline that lease payment. So prospectively, that's what we're thinking if we get there. So we're consistently working and following up with the IRS. It's a slow process. Next would be, good point about the capital improvement being fluid. If we do bond and we get proceeds from the bond for Bank-Inter County, and then above that we use for facility improvements, we've talked to Chad, you're going to see an acceleration of those projects over the 2 to 3 year period we have to expend that money to do that. So that would be an example where you would have an injection of funding to replace elevators and to do this on an accelerated time frame. So that's a good example of how that could change with decisions you all make in the coming months. For the MERS valuation, this is a big piece, and this is what we told people when we went out in November to townships and cities, that balancing the budget through cuts is it really is the most painful and inefficient way to do it, because you see that loss of salaries up here, and then you look at the output at the bottom, and it's not a dollar for dollar savings, and it sucks. You're talking about going after institutions that have been hallmarks of this community, and you're getting pennies on the dollar on the back end, but that's where we're at. So when we talk about it, that's a big piece. The difficulty with the valuations that MERS was saying is that until you know who is the last person standing or how things facilitate in a downsize, it's very difficult to get that firm number, because somebody who's been with the county 22 years has a bridged pension benefit, may have retirees' health, is a different expenditure than somebody who's been with the county for 6 years and is not in retirees' health and has the 2.0 multiplier only, right? So until you know who's in the position, it's difficult. So that was part of, but I did talk through the one that they provided, and I think I've got a methodology I can use to try to get a little more accuracy with it. But that is a number, we're gonna give our best on it, but it may change. And on top of it changing, it's still subject to market winds, forces, and then the life expectancy of people that are on the group already, right? So there are constant variables moving with that, but that's going to be the hardest one for us to nail down. And yeah, yeah.
When we're talking about it, and I know I've said it multiple times, I'm going to say it again. People talking about pensions and how they're so costly, we reduced all those benefits. We did that. We reduced retirees' health. We eliminated it. We reduced it first. We bridged the pension benefit. So the employees that are here right now pretty much are not going to see the benefit that what you're paying for here, right? That benefit that's listed here and the amount that you're paying is for past employees, retirees, and past boards. You can't control that, right? We're doing our best as administration and to give you information as a board to make sure that you can contain costs. But again, I'll say it, it's a frustrating thing. It's frustrating for employees that you may lose more employees because you're having to pay these legacy costs. It's just unfair to put that on the backs of the employees that work so hard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Unfair, but constitutionally mandated. As soon as somebody retires out on a pension plan, it is a lock. You can't go back and renegotiate and change. It's constitutionally protected. So, I mean, to Connie's point, it is where we're at. We have sustainable benefit structure in place at the county, and I think we did a good job in putting that together when we early bargained, and it's just a shame that we just don't have the additional revenue to make that work in the long term. So the last thing I will talk to is not this sheet, but this is to department heads and elected offices. We just want to say we know this mandated versus discretionary necessary was not an easy exercise, and we are right there with you. It's frustrating having somebody try to analyze down to the position, especially using Diana's example. If they open up the hallway, you have people working across disciplines, right? So it's very difficult to say, well, this position, isn't mandated. Okay, well, but they because we're so short-staffed, we move between so many functions. So you might say that 25 to 30% of my position is, you're right? And so I think as we pivot to next month, know what you're looking at is the first pass-through for the departments themselves. We're going to try to go through with legal counsel to look at it as well because we have not vetted those. So first off, it's a bird's eye view for you all to look at it from that perspective. And then next month will be the focus on what does it look like from a service standpoint. Historically, I think when cuts happen, it's usually been here's your percentage or here's your dollar amount. And that's because departments go back and they figure out how can we still make our mandated services work with what we have left, right? So while that would be an easier way to approach it up front, I think the inventory exercise of really boiling this out is valuable to the public. It's valuable to you all as commissioners, and I thank department heads for going through it, even though it was frustrating and difficult, because this is what the people need to see. You need to understand that county government is complex. It's a different complexity than township level. It's a different complexity than city level. And that's just the reality of how U.S. governmental structure is in place. We provide different services, and it's nice to see it laid out. We started kind of greasing the wheels on this back in November at the executive leadership team, saying, hey, be doing this work now, be making notes, be thinking in this context. But it's a lot to have come through at the end, and everybody was hopeful for the public safety. But I just wanted to share that point because there's just a lot of frustration and angst across the county, and we feel it too, and we thank you for your participation in the process.
I think with that, we've been here long enough. I think we're good to go answer any questions that you may have today. I will note, you heard Communications Director Bailey talk about the grants that we submitted. Those, again, would help the budget. One of those included funding for an animal control building that would change what would happen if we were fortunate enough to get something like that. But again, with employees being fearful, they're going to leave, you're going to lose them. So having a funding for a building, it's like starting from the ground up, so. But does anyone have any questions they want to ask right now, or any requests that you want to make of staff or any offices?
Chairman Mao.
Email me.
I'm just looking at this estimated. So you get the 3 million for 25, 26, and as you go across, it appears to be going up every year by 200,000, except when you get to 29, 20, 30.
So what we had to do, and thank you so much for pointing that out. This is why we have a smart chairman. That is related to the jail millage and that its expiration. So each year we move positions off of there. We chose to move all of the positions in 1 year, so that is why there's a large increase there. They'd all be back into the general fund.
Any other questions?
Connie, I don't have my sheet anymore about when our millages expire. I thought that the jail was coming off before that year.
So the jail, E-Tran, the medical care facility all come off December 2026. So those funds, those taxes are still levied in December of 2026. The jail debt will be paid off by 2028, 2027.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we did have a refunding on the jail debt a few years back, which did save money. So we are going to be able to extend those positions through a little longer than we thought, right? So we did that for this year, for this budget projection for next year. We did retain a position and moved actual higher cost positions, so command positions versus non-supervisory corrections position are in the millage, so that we're maximizing the use of those millage funds and have to make less general fund cuts.
Okay, so then, so in 2026, we'll be still collecting all three of those, the medical care facility, the E-Tran, and the jail expansion millage. Okay, so when does local roads come off? That's a 0.7.
That 27?
Yeah, so it looks like E-Tran, from our May report that we did last year, would be through 2025, so
Well,
yeah,
it's levied one
yeah.
last time in 26.
Yeah, and then you have the next two that would have to be renewed or would not be collectible. Looks like jails last is 2026, but as Connie's talking about, it's levied that year, so you have the funding the 1 year after. Let me see. And it looks like medical care, both are in the same year, so both jail and medical care would come off at the same time. I think those
We
are.
won't be looking at those because we've already built the buildings. So we're not renewing any of that. E-Tran, depending on what we do. Okay, but, so the next one I have a question was on local roads, Ben, the 12 years is up.
That would be 2026 with funds being able to be expended into 27. And I believe it's been discussed, but they're planning on coming to the board to ask for renewal at a lower rate. I think Chairman Motz mentioned that.
Okay, it's half
Yeah.
of where it is right now.
Yeah.
What, and right now, isn't it 1.5?
Correct.
Okay. Because I know Matt Hanna, when he came here to Public Works and Planning, he said that we would discuss it. That was a couple months ago. We'd discuss it and then come up with something maybe for a maintenance type situation.
Correct.
Okay.
And I will mention, when we went to local communities to talk about our ballot proposals, they did ask about the road millage, because those communities have relied on that funding over the last 12 years, 11 years, to do their projects as well. Or to have, like within a township, to have back roads sprayed and maintained. So it's been very beneficial and something that they would have put money towards, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? you have anything else to add, Connie? No? You said what had to be said. All right, thank you. Lastly, our last limited public comment. If you have something to say, step to the podium. You have 3 minutes.
Well, I've got nothing good to say. Last 2 weeks, we've had a cookout for the deputies, and I'll tell you what, it was very somber, very somber. I've got numerous deputies right now. Oakland County's recruiting, Livingston, Calhoun, Oakland, Ottawa, Kent. They're all looking for deputies, and they know that Eaton County's got some of the best deputies on the road. It's sad that I'm gonna be losing these folks because we worked so hard to make Eaton County Sheriff's Office one of the best in the state. The last 3 years, it's been an uphill battle with staffing. It's just sad. It's sad. And it's gonna be years before Out County's gonna have any type of road patrol at all. This should have been taken care of years ago, folks. Years ago, under John Fuentes. Yeah, all right, I'm throwing him under the bus. So, this week, the undersheriff and I met with Michigan State Police Post 11 commanders. Told them what's the bad news. As of Monday, next Monday, there will not be any road patrol in the Out County. I've got deputies who are looking for other jobs. I've got 10 in the Out County right now. And what's gonna happen is they're gonna be gobbled up by these other counties. But in the meantime, they have open cases, open investigations that they have to do. So they're gonna sit in the office and finish these open cases, so they don't have time to take calls in the Out County. And I told MSP that. They've got 18 troopers for 3 counties for 24-hour coverage. You can do the math and find out how many he's gonna get in Eaton County. Sure, they'll probably take the calls. They're gonna be very selective on what calls they take, because some calls they just can't do. These troopers have to do their own reports. Here at Eaton County, we have clerks that actually transcribe these reports. MSP is not that fortunate. For some reason, I don't know why, but they have to do their own police reports. You know, I got so much to say. I just very upsetting that this millage did not pass in November. I mean, it's horrible. It's like losing a family member. And it's only gonna get worse, folks, worse. Sure, right now we're in the first stages of deleting these people from employment. But there's no plans for the future, none. Who cares about law enforcement? The voters who voted no don't care. They think that just because they can carry a gun now, they're gonna take care of their own business. Good luck with that. But people are not gonna get the services that they've been used to for years. It's pretty sad. I don't know what the answer is from here on out. It's just gonna be horrible. I mean, the question asks, will crime go up, go down? It might look like it goes down because the police aren't taking the calls anymore. So of course, the numbers are gonna go down. But there's gonna be crime out there. And if you don't think these criminals know that there's no more sheriff's office out there on patrol, they know. They know. Open season, folks. That's what's gonna happen. So, I've lost another animal control officer this week. I think Josh is here. Yep. He's a fine animal control officer. He did a great job. I've got one left. Christy, I can't have her go out on the street because she's got a building to take care of with animals in it. So she's probably gonna stay in the office a lot unless there's an aggressive animal. So if we're gonna do away with animal control, I think you need to retract the ordinance in the county. These cities are gonna have to deal with themselves when they have a loose animal, a domestic animal. So it's gonna be a hair-raising time in the coming years, coming months. So that's all I wanted to say. There's more, but that'll come later. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned until May the 30th.